Blessed be, welcome to the Circle of Heka. I'm Lady Amaris. So I've had a few questions that have been asked over the course of my time on YouTube, and I'll just address three of the most prominent ones that seem to come up quite a lot. So if you've asked the question, here's the answer to it, but you're not the only one who's asked the question, so don't feel that I'm making fun of you or anything if I happen to say something that may offend. Everyone seems to be very frightened of saying things that may offend people these days, and what may offend one person may not offend another, so you never know. So the first one is, am I going to go to hell if I start practicing witchcraft? Yes you will.
You will come to the dark side, my pretty. You will love it there. We have cookies.
See, all I can say is that if you're worried about going to hell, then I would look into witchcraft a little bit more. I would try and understand the actual the aspects and what it is that you're actually looking into. Are you looking into it as a religion, a pagan religion? Are you looking at it just as primarily just doing spells, so more of a hoodoo kind of thing, less of the religious side, more of just the spell side. So I would look into it a little bit more before you even start trying anything, especially if you're worried about going to hell. Mainly because what you will find is, if you're asking that question, that you have probably been what's known as indoctrinated into another religion or another set of another culture that has a strict set of guidelines as to what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. And especially when it comes to certain religions, witchcraft in the eyes of many religions is not acceptable, even though most of the time many of these religions are practicing witchcraft. They're just doing it under different names. But anyone who is not of the priest class, so to speak, is not allowed to practice the craft of the wise. It is only reserved to the priest class, which is why witchcraft and anything that is not seen as Christian and good, we'll just use Christian for the example, because it happens in many religions. If it's not of the specific party line, then it's evil and bad, so then you're going to go to their form of hell. Now, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily so. If you believe it is going to be so, then maybe it will. Many people have different ideas as to what happens when you die, whether you go into a kind of like a holding space where your ideas and beliefs of the previous life are kind of played out a little bit like purgatory, and then once you shed that aspect, that ego aspect of yourself, and you realize that that's actually just let's say we'll call it a construct, then you actually are out of purgatory and become a spirit form, and realize that there is no heaven, there is no hell. It is just a construct that has been made to keep people in line, to keep people doing what they've been told to do. If you don't do this, then you're going to go to hell. A little bit similar to say when you're a child and your parents kind of told you, well, if you're not good, then Santa Claus isn't going to give you a present. He's going to give you a lump of coal. Similar kind of thing. It's do good, or be good, or you get punished. That's the way. So Going to hell because you're going to practice witchcraft, it's up to you, really. What are you doing when you're practicing witchcraft? Witchcraft isn't inherently evil. Contrary to popular belief, and contrary to what maybe Hollywood would like to tell you, is that witchcraft isn't evil. It is the person that is, say, wielding the power. That is the difference between whether that magic is going to be for the betterment of humanity, the betterment of society, or for its detriment. It is the person themselves, the practitioner. Magic itself isn't inherently good or bad. So just by understanding some of these things, you understand that being worried about going to hell if you start to practice witchcraft is something that you've been told to keep you in line. So I would say do a little bit more research into what it is that you're actually looking at, what type of witchcraft you're looking at, whether it is, as I said, whether you're looking at it as in a religious aspect, or whether you're looking at it just to do certain spells to achieve certain things. Either way, no, you're not going to go to hell. No, I may be technically wrong, but I am under the belief in my memory, that's the garbled thing that is in my brain, that the concept of hell, or the name of hell, actually came from the Norse idea of the Vikings and the Norse religion, where if you were a warrior, if you died a heroic warrior death, then you would go to Valhalla, and that was the place that that you wanted to be. That was the wonderful place where the ale flowed freely, that you could eat and chase buxom wenches around, and it was heaven. But if you didn't die the heroic death of the warrior, then you went to hell, and hell was the domain of the goddess Hel, and that would be the place where children and the elderly who couldn't who didn't die heroic death, and women went. And in the eyes of many warriors, that would be like hell. It would be like, oh gosh, I don't want to go there because the wife's going to be there, the kids are going to be there, and all of that sort of thing. So if you didn't die the heroic death, then you would literally go to a place that wasn't the ideal. So that idea has kind of been twisted into the fact of if you weren't the spiritual hero, so to speak, then you didn't go to heaven. You went where all the where everyone else went, and that was an idea of hell. So and there's also the idea that we are in hell already. We are in a construct that is not is hard, and there's lots of lessons to learn, and it's not easy to do many things as it is in a spiritual aspect. So there are ideas that we are actually in hell at the moment, and hell is the training ground for spiritual beings. So it's all on how you look at it. Another question that I've been asked quite a lot is, when you're doing works of witchcraft, am I going to invoke demons and spirits and whatnot? And I have to kind of think, what is it that you're doing straight off? When you learn anything, and I've said this in previous videos, you must have a base, you must have a foundation. And when you're learning your foundation, you're learning how to keep a space clean, you're learning how to meditate, you're learning how to concentrate, you're learning all of these different fundamental things. You're not going straight into picking up some grand grimoire and invoking some entity or spirit or demon. You just don't do that. It's kind of like you have to learn how to. So you have to learn how to be able to shut the door before you open the door. If you can't shut the door once the door has been opened, then you shouldn't be opening the door in the first place. So it's all of those fundamental things that you learn, and it's those ones that people go, oh, do I have to do that? It's all the really boring things that you have to do when you first start out, and no one wants to really do that, but it's those things that you have to do. It's like learning a martial art. You have to go through over and over and over again those basic techniques so that you can then use them do them fast and do them without thinking. Do them so that they become part of your DNA. And when you are faced with something that is kind of confronting and gets you, you have that basic understanding that's part of your DNA now, because you've gone over and over and over it, that you can do any kind of protection thing without even thinking. It just flows through you, and that comes with repetition. It comes with going over all of those techniques to begin with, that solid foundation. You don't jump from thinking about, I'm going to do a marathon, and then just running in and doing a marathon the next day. You just don't do that, because you're going to hurt yourself. Now, and we go back to Hollywood, because Hollywood seems to be the place that most people learn their witchcraft from. So if you go back to Hollywood, any horror movie always has that person that goes and jumps ahead and does something that they shouldn't do. They read the passage, the spell passage, and start to open up some hellmouth or whatever it is. They are cocky and arrogant and think that they know everything, and then just race ahead, and then all hell breaks loose. So if a horror movie is going to teach you anything about witchcraft, it's if you run blindly into something without thinking it through and understanding and having the right protections in place, then shit's going to go down. But if you take it seriously and think about things, and if in your gut you're not ready, then don't do it. Don't think that in order to be practicing witchcraft you have to be summoning demons and you have to be doing all this work with spirits and all of this sort of stuff. You do what you feel comfortable with at that time, and as you grow and learn and explore, then you do what you feel comfortable with then, and then you do what you feel comfortable with then. You just keep going, slowly exploring and expanding. Don't just race ahead and do things that you think you have to do, because that will make you a special witch. Everyone else is doing it, so I must have to do it. I won't be considered legitimate or real if I don't do this. Everyone has their own way of doing it. Everyone has their own speciality, their own thing that comes naturally. And if it is working with spirits, then great. If you have that natural affinity and that's something that you want to do, then do it. If you want to go down the path of invoking demons and whatnot, then fine. If that's what you want to do it. But with all of those, just make sure that you learn from someone who knows what they're doing, or take it slow, take it simply, and make sure that you've got those protection things down pat, whether you're working with spirits, whether you're working with ancestors. I'm sure that everyone's ancestors weren't exactly the nicest. There's always one person in the family tree that was always the nasty pasty, and you don't want to start talking to great uncle Harry, who happened to be a bit of a bastard. Then you want to make sure that you've got all those protections in place before you start doing what's classed as the sexy stuff. So unless you're starting to look at some of those old grimoires and start to do some of these spells out of them, then the likelihood of you invoking something unintentionally is not going to happen. Going through these spells that are designed to invoke those certain energies, you're not going to do it accidentally, especially when you're just learning. No. Okay. Lastly, again, Hollywood, it happens to be the teacher of the occult. If I start learning witchcraft, will I be able to move objects with my mind? Maybe. Again, if that's something that you have an affinity with, maybe it's something that you'll be able to do with no problem. But it's not a matter of saying an incantation, saying a spell, and you're able to move things with your mind. I go back to the idea of the charmed ones. That's the TV show Charmed, where I think they say some kind of the power of 3 will set us free, and then all of a sudden they're moving objects with their minds and stopping time and doing all of this sort of stuff. It's not like that. Witchcraft works in mundane ways. It works in ways of setting up opportunities for you to then take those opportunities and use them. So magic, if was shown the way it is in reality, would be one really boring TV show. It would be an equally boring movie, and no one would watch it. So you have to have those things that are hyper real, hyper reality. Not saying that you can't move things with your mind, that you can't do those sorts of things, that it's not a possibility. What I'm saying is that stuff takes training. It also takes an affinity. It's a little bit like someone who plays a musical instrument. You need to learn how to play the instrument. You need to practice. You need to keep going and going and going. Some people have a natural affinity with music and being able to play a musical instrument, and it's a little bit easier for them. And others need to just put in those hard yards and keep practicing. So being able to move objects with your mind, stop time, all of that sort of stuff is not an impossibility. It's just something that at this stage in, say, human evolution, it's not something that is going to happen quickly. It's something that will be, you have to train for, you have to practice, you have to keep going. So no, you're not going to, let's recap, you're not going to go to hell. You're not going to summon, some, creepy entity from the void, unless that's the spell that you're doing. And then in that case, then why do you not understand what it is that you're doing to start off with? Always research, always trying to understand what it is that you're saying, what it is that you're doing, what the symbols mean, all of those sorts of things before you actually do it. Don't just go off blindly going, oh, such and such said this was cool, I'm going to do it. Do some research first. If I say do some research, find out what it is you're saying, find out what it is, what the symbols mean that you're putting down, all of those sorts of things. And lastly, are you going to move objects with your mind if you say the right incantation? Maybe. Never say no. I haven't found that incantation yet, but it's not something that is part of witchcraft at the moment, witchcraft in this day and age. It is something that is part of Hollywood, and not ruling it out, but there's no incantation. It just takes practice and hard work, the same as most things. So I hope that helps to alleviate any kind of worries that you have. And so if you're worried about anything, ask questions, research, look into it before you start just racing ahead and going into something. And if something doesn't feel right, then explore it, find out why. And yeah, merry meet, merry part, merry meet again. Blessed be.
If you like this video and want to see more, please click on the links provided. If you think this witchcraft thing may be for you, please subscribe. Blessed be.